the thinking of the problem. Okay, the thinking of the problem, all this thinking of the problem is our memories, our thoughts and our feelings, all these things, which are in the energy form, and then they can produce, bring in so many other thoughts, and then create the state of what I call the mental jungle, over your mind like this. Yeah, I got another thing here. Suppose this is your mental self, which I also say that is the nature of your true self. This is your true self. Your physical self, in fact, is only a shell. It's only a shell, just like, thing like this. It's not actually your real self. Your real self is your inner self or your true self. So when all the problem pouring in turn into Jerry like this, Jerry, this whole army of Jerry will take over your mind, your mental self, and create the state of a mental black forest, and then shaking you all out like this. Create the state of suffering, the first noble truth, right? The first noble truth, first noble truth is the truth about the nature of the suffering, which is something that you got to recognize first, that it exists in you, within you. Okay? And then the Buddha tells us that the cause of the suffering is because all this lump of Jerry that make up of your thoughts, your memories, and your feelings, create the state of a mental jungle, mental black forest, cover your mental self like this. So this is the cause of the suffering. So the essence of the Buddhism, okay, is trying to disconnect and go beyond this suffering. Because what happened on the night of the enlightenment of the Buddha, on that night, the Buddha had the experience, the first-hand experience of this lump of suffering, disconnect and go beyond. In Thai we call lut pon. Lut is mean disconnect, go beyond is pon. Okay, so the Buddha was the first person who disconnect and go beyond from this lump of suffering. Okay, so he had another experience that no one before have ever experienced, this liberation, this freedom, mental freedom before. So that's how he know that there is a state of the end of suffering, the end of suffering, go beyond this thing. That's why he come back and trying to teach us, okay, all his followers, to liberate from their life from Jerry, disconnect and go beyond by the means of the four foundations of mindfulness. Okay, the four foundation of mindfulness, which I call bringing your mental self back home. Okay, how exactly you do it? You use your mental eyes, mental self with the mental eyes, to know your breathing, know your movement, know your sensation, which are the nature of the home. The nature of the home for your mental self to come back and take refuge. Okay, so by doing this, all your mental Jerry, which are the carrier of the problem, will gradually disappear, reduce, get rid of it. So this is how you can reclaim your mental freedom, allow you to experience your mental peace and stability. And this very practice is the core practice of Buddhism, the real essence of Buddhism. Okay? Is that clear for you?
So essentially it's an exploration to the layperson.
Yeah, to the layperson who don't know about Buddhism. A lot of people thought that when you talk about Buddhism, okay, it's about the law of karma, it's about cycle of rebirth, reincarnation, all these things. Okay? But in fact, the true essence of Buddhism is talk about the nature of the suffering and how to end, overcome, defeat this suffering. Okay, which is the part that not many people talk about, especially in the Western world. Or Buddhism, we talk about karma, reincarnation, all these things. I'm sure you heard about all this. But to overcome suffering, have you heard before? No? Yes?
In a way, not
in
so.
a way, yeah.
Buddha sometimes said, yes, the only thing I teach is suffering, and yes, the release
This
from
is
suffering.
all the Buddha talk. He talk about the nature of suffering and how to end suffering. So this is the core of Buddhism that I really like to convey to the, to humanity really, and especially teach them how you can overcome, all this lump of suffering that bothering you, bully you, all the time.
So using your tools and your method of explanation is teaching those who are not Buddhists and don't know the normal terms used by ordinary teachers, and
Yes.
putting it into a simpler, more easily understandable way, particularly for Westerners.
Yes. In fact, we like to say this is Buddhism, this is Buddhist practice. But when you actually go into it, suffering is a universal feeling, isn't it? Like tears have only one taste, isn't it? Salty.
People of every
Laughter,
religion suffer
yeah.
the same problems.
Yeah. Laughter is also one taste. So suffering is universal. There is no single human being who never gone through the state of suffering like this before. Which I talk about stress, worry, anxiety is already suffering in the Buddha's term. Okay? Not about life in Calcutta, So this nature, in fact, is very universal. So I'm trying to make the practice, become less Buddhist by telling that, okay, this is your physical self, this is your mental self, which every human being or they all have it. As well as your thought, memories, feelings, this is also everyone have this, and round up into Tom and Jerry. Yeah, this is your Tom and this is all Jerry. Jerry proliferate, isn't it? Proliferate into the state of a mental jungle, take over your mental self or your inner self. Because this is your true self. When you experience this lump of suffering, coming to rub onto your mind, the pain is much more than hurting your physical self, isn't it? Your physical self, you've got a cut here and there, you sew it up, it will heal in no time at all, because this is a shell. But whoever that come to hurt your mental self, this is your true self, the pain is excruciating, is much more than your physical self, which is serious now. Okay, which is very serious. So knowing how to overcome all the suffering that attacking your mental self all the time is very important, and this knowledge cannot confine to just the Buddhist people. It is for humanity. It is universal. And actually, when you come to the actual practice, the actual practice of how to reduce all this, mental pain, all this Jerry, is so simple and it's so neutral, because you use your mental eye. Your mental eye is that lump of consciousness. In the Western world, you call consciousness a lump of consciousness, okay, to correspond this lump of flesh. You have the lump of flesh that are called physical self, and this lump of consciousness, which is the core of life, okay, I transfer it into your mental self to correspond with your physical self. So when you use your mental eyes, you belong to your mental self to know your breathing, know your movement, know your sensation like this. This actual practice is a very neutral and very universal. It's nothing Buddhist at all. Nothing Buddhist at all. So anyone can do it, no matter who you are. You're Christian, you're Taoist, you're Jewish, you're Islam, you're atheist, you're agnostic, you don't believe in anything at all. You all have breathing, you all have movements, you all have your sensations, which the majority of people in the world, they do not know that these three things, breathing, movement, sensations, are the nature of the home where your mental self can come back and take refuge. This is the fact that most people do not know. So therefore, their mental self or their true self are lost in the mental jungle, you see. Lost in the mental jungle, unable to come home. This is the reason why I use the word bring your mental self back home, so that you can come out, from all this mental jungle, safely home. Home to where? Home to your breathing, home to your movement, home to your sensation. Okay? So when you can come home like this, it creates the state of the harmony. The harmony. Okay? Your breathing, movement, sensation is here. If your mind or your mental self is also here, know your breathing, movement, sensation. See, your body is here, your mind is here. This is called harmony. You go, this thing go. Okay, together, harmony, stability. Okay, tranquility go together. Your breathing, movement, sensation here, and this consciousness know your breathing, know your movement, know your sensation. So this is good. Harmony is good. But this life form also have the nature of Jerry. When Jerry come in to take your life over, your inner self over, it is very much like your mental self is being taken away from home. Your breathing is here, your movement, your sensation is here, okay? But your consciousness do not recognize, okay? Do not acknowledge this. You're breathing, but you don't know. Your consciousness is wrapped up with your thought, your problem about the flooding, about this, about, your job, about the people who hate you, all these things, Your mental self, normally you wrap up with all this, problem in your head. So although you are breathing here, but you do not acknowledge it. You do not realize that
you're not aware that
you are not. Yeah, exactly.
You're not aware of what you're touching. And
you are not aware, or you are not
moving
mindful.
around. You're just thinking about your problems.
That's it. Yeah, you are not aware, or you are not mindful of your breathing, your movement, your sensation, because your mind is attached to your thinking and think this and that. So it's very much like, your mental self is taken away from home. So this causes the state of fragmentation. See, your body is here, your mind is elsewhere. Okay, your body is here, your mind is elsewhere. So this fragmentation is bad news. Bad news. Lack of harmony, which means suffering, which means stress, worry, anxiety. So how can you resolve the problem is by taking away all these painful thoughts and painful feelings, which are called Jerry. Take them away by let your mental eyes know your breathing, know your movement, know your sensation. Okay, so this is the state of the harmony. Harmony is happiness. Harmony is inner peace, stability. Okay, that's all there is to it really, and this is the core of Buddhism and Buddhist practice. Okay, so it means that if you can do this, your problem will be less. Your inner problem, your mental problem will be less, even though externally the problem is still there, because you cannot change the world, can you? It's impossible to change the world to fit you, to make you happy. So instead, the Buddha said that just change inside, get rid of all these, thoughts, memories and feelings that attach to the problem, get rid of them, and then your mental self, your inner self will be free, and then you can live in harmony among all the problems that happen in the world. That's all there is to it. So in the end, it's all come down to the practice. How much dedication you have toward this practice that called, mindfulness with breathing or vipassana, or bring your mental self back home. You got to commit, you got to discipline yourself, you got to dedicate to this practice by really improve your skill of practice. And then later on, if you become skillful in having, mindfulness with breathing, knowing movement, knowing your sensation, all this, you become a happier person. Among all these problems that are happening in the world, all this doom and gloom, but you can be in control of your mind because you know a skill of how to get rid of all this journey. Is it
still
how?
in the world, but you're unaffected by it.
Exactly. Yeah. All the trouble in the world, but you won't be affected by it. Yeah. Is it clear to you, Morris?
It's a good metaphor for explaining it.
Yes. Tom and Jerry.
Especially with the little models and the Super Saiyan.
So, saying like this, would you, be motivated, to practice, bring your mental self back home and everything? Would you like to do it?
Something I'd be interested in.
Yeah.
If it's for the betterment of one's well-being.
And reduce your suffering.
Your suffering, yeah. I try to tell people that in fact this is a skill, a mental skill. A skill just like swimming, rowing a boat or learning a new language or cooking, riding a bicycle is all skill. But this skill that called bringing your mental self back home is the actual skill that can make you become a happier person, a more peaceful person, a more in control person, because you will face all kind of situation that can make your mind become boom 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 like this, which is quite scary if anything happens serious